Hi everyone, this is Crystal, and today I will be creating a 12 by 12 layout for Colorcast Designs. And these are the pieces that I received this month. This month's release is absolutely gorgeous. I will be sure to link the Colorcast Design shop down in the description box below. I'm super excited about these. The colors are amazing. My favorite is definitely this Let's Go piece. I'm definitely going to be using that today. But you can see there's also Go See Do, Home Sweet Home, Into the Wild, Adventure Awaits, this really adorable geotag confetti, and a bunch of other stuff as well. So I am going to be creating a layout about a trip we took, kind of an impromptu trip last year to Michigan. This is the photo I'm going to use. For the rest of my supplies, I am going to be using the Let's Travel collection from Cartabella. I thought the colors worked really well with the colors in these Colorcast Designs pieces. And even though my photo is very warm, I think that this collection is going to help tie those two together. So that is my plan. I am thinking I'm going to start with some mixed media, so I'm going to clear these away and get started. Okay, so I'm ready to start my mixed media. I have a sheet of basil marshmallow cardstock. I have my craft mat down on my desk to protect the surface, and I'm using some Dina clear gesso and my Prima 2-inch silicone brush to just cover the page with some clear gesso. Gesso will help protect the cardstock, even though this is basil marshmallow, which is a bit thicker and takes mixed media very well. The clear gesso is just going to help protect it and let me play around with the color on the page before it soaks in and just kind of stays put. So I'll be able to move around the color that I add and get it exactly how I want it. So while that is drying, I've just grabbed a sheet of scratch paper and I've pulled out all of the Lindy's Magicals that I have in shades of pink. So I have 4 out. I have not swatched any of these, so I don't remember what the colors are, what they look like. So I just decided to use this scrap piece of paper and just put some color down and get a feel for what each of these looks like. And then I'll pull over the other supplies and decide which of these I actually want to use on my page. So I have 3 of the Magicals, and then this is a shaker that I am trying to get open right now. And I tried to stick my brush in. That did not work. I ended up just sprinkling just a little bit on the page and then adding some water. So I just have a little jar of water, actually 2 little jars of water right above my page. And I'm just adding a little bit of water to each of these powders to activate them so that I can see the color. I also have 2 sprays from Studio Calico. These are older Color Theory sprays. And I thought maybe one of those would match better, but they don't. I don't end up using either of those. I just kind of used the wand to see what color they are once they hit the page, but neither of them really worked. So I've grabbed one of those geotags to kind of get a feel for what color works best with it, and I'm pulling over the papers. And I'm trying to kind of marry the 2 colors in both the acrylic pieces and the paper. So one is much brighter pink and the other one is more rosy. So I want to include both of those in my background. So that's why I was trying to get a good match of colors. So now I've pulled my cardstock back over. It's fully dried. I can start adding some color to the background. I'm starting with the Pink Ladies Pink Magicals from Lindy's. And I'm using the packaging technique. So I just have a little piece of plastic packaging. I used a craft knife to add some powder to the package and then just used my brush to add some water to that just to activate it and move it around on the plastic, and then just kind of plopped it down on the page and used the plastic to just get a base layer of color. And then I can come back in with my paintbrush and some water and move it around a bit more to kind of smooth out the edges and get a full coverage and make sure that all of those little granules in the Lindy's powders are activated. So it wasn't quite big enough the first time, so I just repeated that same process, added a little bit of Lindy's to my plastic packaging, added some water to that, kind of plopped it down on the page, and then I can come back in with my paintbrush and smooth out all of those lines and edges. I want the edges of this kind of color blob to be smooth. I don't want there to be any harsh edges. So just using my paintbrush to make sure that that happens, and then I can add some splatters as well, just using the little bit of Lindy's that was left on the plastic packaging. So these magical powders are really great in that they do have a lot of color variation within each one of them. So I always like to make sure that I'm adding multiple tones of color to the background. I don't like it to look too flat and be too consistent. So I really like the magicals for that reason. But I felt like it still needed a little bit more color variation. So I'm going to come back in with the Alpine Ice Rose Magical Shaker and just add it in a couple places. And you can see how this adds highs and lows, adds some darks and lights, and just adds a different tone of pink to the background, makes it a little bit more interesting. So I just added it to those 2 spots. I know that my photo is going to go there in the center, so I don't have to worry about adding it there, but I did want it kind of to flow across the page behind my photo. So that's why I added it in those 2 spots. And then I felt like it also needed just a little bit more of that hot pink color. So I decided to grab the Hottie Patati Hot Pink, and I'm going to add that in a couple spots as well, kind of opposite of the Alpine Ice Rose. And again, doing some splatters of each of these colors in the area where I add them, just again to soften those edges and kind of extend the color out from the center. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside to dry completely. I'm going to let it dry naturally. I'm not going to hit it with my heat gun. And while that's drying, I can start to back my photo. So I grabbed this paper pack, and you can see I don't think I've used it at all. And it's quite old. So it was definitely time to get it out of my stash and onto a page. I'm just looking through the papers for anything that works with the colors that I've chosen. So the colors that are in those acrylic pieces from Colorcast Designs, the colors in my photo. I'm trying to marry, again, those warmer and the cooler tones. Both appear in this collection, so I feel pretty confident that I'll be able to use these papers to do so. So I was just kind of going through and pulling out any that I thought would work. And then I'm going to start with this kind of wave. It has a wave pattern on it, paper. I didn't look at the name of any of these, but yeah, I'm going to start with that and map my photo on this. I had considered using a piece of white cardstock in between my photo and the first colored cardstock mat, but I decided not to. I felt like that was just too stark of a contrast for this kind of light, colorful page that I'm starting to create here. So I'm going to add it directly to this wave pattern and then just trim around the edge, just leaving a very thin border of paper. You can't really see that it's waves, but I know it's waves, and we were at the beach, so I really liked that. That worked for the story I was telling. And then I decided I wanted one more mat around my photo, so I'm just auditioning a couple different pieces here. I'm going to end up going with this one that has the map all over it. And you don't see what the pattern of this paper is. So you don't see that there's maps. You don't see that I'm cutting off part of an airplane. It's just color. It's going to be a very thin mat around the edge of that blue paper. It's just going to be a little bit of this peachy pink color showing around my photo. So I cut a mat, and then I realized that that was too wide of a mat. I'm going to come back in with my Fisker's Guillotine Photo Trimmer and just trim that down a little bit on all 4 sides to get just a very thin mat of this peachy pink paper behind my photo. Okay, so once that is all done, I can pull out my background again and make sure that it is going to work, that it's the right size, that I don't need to add any more or cut it down further to make it work, and it worked out perfectly, so I can move on. It's still not quite dry, so I'm just going to start working with the other elements I want on the page. So I grabbed this paper with all the little sunglasses on it and decided to fussy cut a couple of these out. We are wearing sunglasses in the photo, obviously, and there are a few sunglasses on this sticker sheet, but they have a very white border on them, and I wasn't crazy about that, and I decided I liked the shape of these a bit better, so I'm just going to go ahead and fussy cut those out, just using a fine tip scissors. These happen to be from Fisker's. And I am not going to make you watch me fussy cut all of these out. I just wanted you to see a little bit so you can get a feel for how I go about doing it. It's pretty easy to do. It just takes a little bit of time. Okay, so once that is all done and my background is now completely dry, I decided I wanted to add a little bit more texture to the background. So I grabbed a couple stamp sets. These are both from Illustrated Faith. They're from the Revival Camp last year, which had a travel theme. None of them have any sort of, none of the ones that I'm going to use have any sort of religious connotation to them. They just are kind of like a passport stamp and some arrows and some geotags. So I thought it would add a lot more texture to the background and give it a little bit more interest. And so I stamped that circle kind of passport stamp onto the background using an ink from scrapbook.com called Pink Lemonade. It is currently my favorite pink ink, and it works perfectly with this page. I'm also going to grab, there's this kind of like a plain trail, like a, yeah, I don't know how else to describe it. It's just a dotted line. I'm going to stamp it where I know that my title is going to go, and then also where an embellishment cluster is going to go on the page. And then I do come back and stamp that one more time. And then I decided to bring in this other ink that is a much more hot pink. It's from Hampton Art, and this is where I start to mess up the page. So I grabbed this geotag that says "You are here." I still like the stamp, but you can see it is way too bright on this page. And yeah, I'm starting to think, oh no, what have I done? But then I realized, okay, it's not going to be too bad. I can kind of cover it up, and I'll just add some more of it over to the other side to kind of tie it in. So you can see I'm stamping the light pink where I use the light pink Lindy's. I'm stamping the hot pink where I use the hot pink Lindy's, trying to stay kind of tone on tone with the background. But this Hampton Art ink is just way too bright, way too bright. And stamping it in two places did not help. It doesn't look as bright on camera as it did in person. It just kind of stood out like a sore thumb on my page. So I'm leaving it for now. It's there. It's stamped. I can't do anything about it. I'm going to figure out what to do as I continue to build this page. I'm not going to stress about it. I'm just going to figure out some way of dealing with it as I go on. So for right now, I'm just moving forward. I'm going to grab the ephemera packs from the Cartabella collection and go through them and see if there's anything here that I want to add. I know that I want to add some layers above my photo. I know there are some tags in this ephemera pack. In fact, it's the frames and tags ephemera pack, so I know that there are some tags. So I'm just looking for ones that will work behind my photo. I want to create a cluster there at the top corner. And I also want to create a cluster where I've stamped that geotag in the bottom right corner as well. So I'm just figuring out which ones I want to use. I'm playing around, adding them. Remember, nothing is glued down to my page yet, so I can freely move anything around. I haven't committed to really anything except for the background, of course. Okay, so I'm just pulling out some tags and figuring out what's going to work. I'm also using those sunglasses that I fussy cut from the paper to add to those clusters, and also get a distribution of the color across the page. So I'm sticking with mainly pink and teal. I do end up adding a little bit of that purple that's in the Colorcast Designs acrylic piece, the title, Let's Go, as well. I have another ephemera pack. This is just the regular ephemera pack, so I'm going to go through it as well and see if there's anything there. There were these banners. I thought about making a little banner at the top. I don't end up doing that. I end up taking those off. It just felt like it was a little bit too much. I thought about adding this tag behind my photo, but again, it was just too much pink. So then I decided, well, maybe I need to bring in more teal. So I try this adventure tag. But I felt like that really drew your attention too much away from the photo and the other elements on the page. It was just too dark and too stark against that lighter background. So I ended up taking that off as well. I'm looking through the two sets of chipboard and the sticker sheet as well. I decided to add in some florals. There were two florals on the sticker sheet, so I'm going to add one to the cluster there, and then I'm going to replace that adventure tag with the second floral as well, and that just is much softer, and it just kind of blends into the background a bit better than that tag did. Okay, so I've used a tag there on the side to cover up the stamping that I didn't like that was close to my photo. So that's one of the issues gone. And you can see I keep trying to add something over the top of the ones that are off to the left-hand side, but they're too far away from my photo, and I don't want to create another cluster there. I already have my 3 clusters. They already create a triangle around my photo. I don't want to just randomly have a 4th one that doesn't really make sense on the page. So I'm going to have to figure out a different way of dealing with that stamping there. And I haven't quite done that yet, but you'll see I do come up with a solution of sorts. Okay, so I'm getting those tags exactly where I want them. I want you to still be able to read the word. It says destination on that stamp that I stamped up there, the Illustrated Faith stamp. I want you to still be able to read that. So I'm trying to get them perfectly aligned so that you can still read the stamp, but they still tuck behind my photo and you can see both of the tags. So it's just a matter of getting them exactly where I want them, and then I can go ahead and glue those down. I added that floral again, and now it's time to glue down my title. So I like to use glossy accents to glue down these acrylic pieces. I find that's what works best for me. I'm sure lots of other liquid glues would work as well. I didn't make you watch that. It does take a little bit of time to glue all those little pieces down inside that frame. So yeah, I did that off camera, but there it is, all done, all adhered to the page. Now I can add this cluster as well. I glued down that tag, and I'm going to add those pink sunglasses, but I felt like it needed a little something else beneath it. So I went back to the sticker sheet. I found a leaf to add to that top cluster. I really like that leaf. I wish there was another one. I wanted to add another one to the bottom floral cluster as well, but that was the only one on the sheet. So I had to go without. But I did find a little phrase that says Adventure Time, and it's in the exact perfect colors that are in the acrylic piece. So I definitely wanted to add that. And then I'm gonna pop up my fussy cut sunglasses just using some foam dots and add that there to that cluster. And then I will finish out that cluster with another geotag. I think this is where I bring in the purple one. I was trying to make that second pair of sunglasses work, but I don't end up using those. I felt like the one pair was plenty, and the others just didn't really fit in any of the other clusters I have on the page. Okay, so I am still trying to play around with how to cover up my stamping mistake. I had to walk away for a little bit to think about it, and when I came back I decided to add a few more little embellishments from the sticker sheet from the Cartabella collection. There were a couple little circles. I'm going to add one to the top cluster using a foam dot, and another one, it's the same kind of design, it's a circle with a heart in it. One's in pink and peach, and one is in teal and a darker teal, I guess. So I'm going to add both of those, one to the top cluster and one by my title. I thought about switching them, but no, I really like the pink at the top and the teal by the title, so that's what I'm going to end up doing. And then once I have those in place, I can finally deal with my stamping mistakes. So my first attempt is to just repeat the stamping in a second place on the page. So where I had originally stamped the larger geotag, I think, okay, maybe I will just sprinkle some more of those smaller geotags in that same super bright ink to that cluster there at the bottom, and then maybe that will help tie in that color and help it make a little bit more sense on the page. So that's the first thing I'm going to try. I'm going to grab that same Hampton Art ink. I'm going to grab the geotag stamp again and stamp 3 little geotags there by the cluster where I have the sunglasses. I just added a little arrow there to where I had stamped that kind of trail, and I thought that was just perfect next to my title. Okay, so here's where I grabbed the stamp and the ink. I'm going to try stamping it again, 3 little geotags, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It looks completely out of place. I didn't stamp it in the right place even to try to get the effect I was going for. I think it looks just awful. So I decide, when all else fails, grab white gesso. So I'm going to grab my white gesso, I'm going to grab that piece of plastic again and add just a little bit there, and then grab a small brush and try and just mute that super bright color a little bit. Of course, I started with the ones I had just stamped, and it's dye ink. It was nowhere near dry. I don't know what the deal is, but it took a long time for this ink to dry on the gessoed background. So I go back up to the top ones. I'm using my brush, I'm using my finger. I'm just trying to mute that color a little bit. And once I had done that, then I could come back in with the Hottie Patati pink and add some more splatters to help kind of make those little blobs of color work a little bit better. And that's it. That's the page all done. So I hope you enjoyed watching this process. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you all back here very soon.